Hello, welcome to Emmet Fox. I want to begin our time together today by asking you a question that might challenge everything you have ever been taught about how the world works. What if the financial supply you so desperately need, the abundance you have been praying for, already exists at this very moment? What if it is waiting just behind an invisible veil, entirely ready to be claimed by you, but is being actively blocked by only one thing: the habitual, unexamined frequency of your own thought? Decades ago, the great New Thought teacher Emmet Fox posed a very similar question during a packed lecture in New York City. The year was marked by profound economic anxiety, and the room was filled with individuals carrying the heavy burdens of debt, fear, and hopelessness. When Fox spoke those words, the entire hall fell into an absolute, stunned silence. No one expected that answer. The men and women in that auditorium had come expecting a lecture on human toil. They expected to hear about the nobility of physical effort, the necessity of brutal sacrifice, and the virtues of enduring hardship. But Fox stood at the podium and continued with a truth that pierced right through their despair. The universal law of supply does not respond to the sweat of your brow. It responds strictly and infallibly to the vibration of your consciousness. He taught them that there is a specific metaphysical treatment, a secret prayer of sorts, that, when spoken with true spiritual comprehension and feeling, literally tunes your mind to the exact frequency where divine abundance flows. In this state, prosperity manifests without the grueling obstacles, without the harsh limits, and without the agonizing conditions so often imposed by the material world. This was not an empty promise. It was not some comforting, feel-good illusion to make poor people feel better about their plight. It was pure, demonstrable spiritual science. It is the exact scientific method Fox applied for decades to help thousands of broken, exhausted people completely transform their physical realities. And the secret to his success was simple: he did not do it for them. He merely taught them how to activate the divine presence that was already sitting dormant within them, waiting to be awakened. Before we can even begin to approach that specific prayer, however, there is a fundamental, foundational truth that Emmet Fox required every single one of his students to understand with absolute, unwavering clarity. You see, the vast majority of humanity suffers from a profoundly distorted relationship with money and supply. This is not because they are bad people. It is not because God has decided to punish them, or because they lack intelligence or work ethic. It is simply because they were programmed, often from early childhood, with deeply ingrained beliefs that directly contradict the spiritual laws of prosperity. Fox observed a fascinating and tragic pattern throughout his ministry. The people who came to him living in chronic, unrelenting lack did not actually have a money problem. What they had was a consciousness problem. Their subconscious minds were absolutely saturated with thoughts of limitation, of fear, of scarcity, and of unworthiness. The subconscious mind acts as an incredibly powerful magnet. But when it is programmed with lack, it becomes a reversed magnet. It actively, aggressively repels the very abundance that divine mind places at their disposal every single morning. You must understand that the universal law of mind is entirely impersonal. It does not play favorites. It does not favor the intellectual over the simple, minded, nor does it favor the deeply religious over the completely indifferent. Just as the law of electricity will light a criminal's home, just as brightly as it lights a saint's home, the law of supply responds solely to what a person accepts as truth in the deepest, most hidden recesses of their inner being. This is precisely why two people can live in the same city, possess the exact same education, work the exact same job, and yet one prospers effortlessly while the other struggles endlessly against an invisible tide. Fox's teaching was entirely revolutionary for its time, and it remains so today. Change your consciousness, and your financial reality must change. It cannot help but change. It is not a mere possibility, it is an unbending, mathematical law of the universe. To understand how deep this programming goes, consider the story of a man named Thomas. Thomas grew up in a humble, hard-working family where every penny was fought for. From a very young age, he was taught by his environment that money was inherently scarce, incredibly difficult to obtain, and largely reserved for other people. His father, a man who worked his hands to the bone, repeated phrases that etched themselves into Thomas's developing mind like iron strikes on stone. Money doesn't grow on trees. The rich only get rich by exploiting the poor and the honest. We are good people, so we are not that kind of people. These words were spoken by his father without a shred of malice. They were meant to be protective. But spiritually and psychologically, they wielded an enormous, destructive power. By the time Thomas was 42 years old, he remained exactly where his childhood programming had forcefully planted him. He worked tirelessly, often taking on extra shifts, yet he earned very little. Worse still, he felt a deep, gnawing sense of subconscious guilt whenever he dared to desire more for his life. He had tried to start small businesses, but they mysteriously failed. He managed to save money, but sudden emergencies would always arise to wipe out his bank account. It was as if an invisible, highly intelligent force was actively sabotaging his every advancement. And that is exactly what was happening. It was in a quiet bookstore that Thomas stumbled upon a text by Emmet Fox that described his agonizing situation with a breathtaking, almost terrifying precision. In that book, Fox wrote that poverty is never an external condition that simply happens to us. It is instead a mental image that we are forcefully outpicturing onto the canvas of our world. The exterior world has no creative power of its own. It simply obeys what the interior consciousness commands, consciously or unconsciously, every second of every day. When Thomas read this, it wasn't a feeling of guilt that washed over him. It was a profound, earth-shattering recognition. For the first time in his life, he understood that he was the projector, and his reality was merely the screen. He held the power to change the movie his mind had been playing on a loop for 4 decades. Fox explained that this dynamic operates through the principle of divine correspondence. Your outer world always corresponds exactly to your inner world. Not approximately, not sort of, exactly. It is like looking into a mirror. If you don't like the reflection of your hair, you cannot reach out and try to comb the glass. You must comb your own hair, and the reflection automatically changes. This principle means something incredibly powerful and totally liberating for you right now. If your current financial situation does not satisfy you, the cause is not the government. It is not the global economy. It is not your employer, your family, or your luck. The root cause is the pattern of consciousness you have cultivated within yourself. And because the cause resides entirely in your own mind, you, and you alone, have the absolute, God-given power to transform it beginning today. If this teaching is bringing a true soul awakening to your life right now, and you are ready to stop fighting the mirror and start changing your consciousness, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. In the next segment, we are going to dive exactly into how you alter that internal reflection as I reveal the specific metaphysical treatment that breaks this cycle of lack forever. When a student came to Emmet Fox in a state of financial crisis, he did not immediately offer them the secret prayer, nor did he give them practical advice on balancing a checkbook. He understood that before a treatment can be effective, there must be an accurate spiritual diagnosis. Fox taught that there are 3 specific spiritual laws that strictly govern the flow of money, supply, and opportunity in the life of every human being. When you are experiencing chronic lack, you are unknowingly violating at least one, and often all 3, of these inviolable laws. The first is the law of consciousness. This law dictates that you can only ever receive and maintain that which your mind accepts as entirely possible and natural for you. If your conscious mind prays for wealth, but your deeper subconscious mind feels unworthy of it or believes that money is inherently evil, the law of consciousness will obey your deepest conviction. You will repel the very good you are asking for. Your consciousness is like a vessel. If you approach the infinite ocean of God's abundance with a thimble-sized consciousness of what you deserve, a thimbleful is all the universe can pour into your life. The second is the law of circulation. This is perhaps the most misunderstood spiritual principle of all. Money is not a static object, it is dynamic, divine energy, and the very nature of energy is that it must flow. Fox declared with absolute firmness that money, which does not circulate, becomes stagnant, and stagnant money loses its power to multiply. It is like the water of a river. When it flows freely, it brings life to everything it touches. But if you dam it up out of a fearful hoarding mentality, it turns into a toxic swamp. The person who hoards their money out of the sheer terror of losing it actively interrupts their own divine supply. You must learn to give and spend with faith, knowing that the flow is cyclical. The third is the law of source. This is the trap that captures almost the entirety of the human race. The law of source demands that you recognize God, the infinite divine mind, as the single, true, and inexhaustible provider of your life. The grand mistake we make is looking to our employers, our businesses, our clients, or the government as our source of supply. Those are merely human channels. When you idolize the channel, you cut yourself off from the source. When you believe your job is your source of wealth, you live in constant terror of losing it. To illustrate how these laws operate, Fox often pointed to real-world demonstrations. Consider Pilar, a dedicated nurse living in Guadalajara. For 7 agonizing years, she lived in a constant cycle of debt. Every paycheck she earned was entirely consumed before she could save a single peso. She had begged God for help, made desperate promises, and prayed until her voice was hoarse. Nothing changed. She eventually surrendered to the heartbreaking belief that God simply did not have abundance reserved for her. This brings us to the metaphysical treatment itself, the secret prayer that Emmet Fox formulated based on his deep study of the Sermon on the Mount. Fox insisted that a prayer repeated without comprehension is merely useless noise. The sheer power of this specific prayer lies not in the syllables, but in the expanded consciousness that speaks them. You must deeply understand what you are declaring. The prayer begins with a radical realignment. God is my only true source of supply. When you declare this, you are forcefully breaking the illusion that your money comes from the material world. You are actively detaching your sense of security from your employer, the economy, or the stock market. You are acknowledging that while God may use a paycheck or a client as a channel today, the infinite mind has millions of other channels ready to open if that one ever closes. The second part of the treatment declares, divine abundance flows to me now through channels known and unknown. This phrase is the master key to manifestation because it frees divine intelligence from the clumsy limitations of your human intellect. The most common mistake people make in prayer is outlining, telling God exactly how to deliver the money. They pray for a specific person to pay them or a specific promotion to happen. By adding channels known and unknown, you are stepping out of the way. You are telling the universe that you are completely open to receiving prosperity in ways your rational mind could never have possibly imagined or orchestrated. The final part affirms, I accept my divine heritage of prosperity with deep gratitude and absolute faith. Notice the profound shift in posture here. You are not begging. You are not pleading with a distant deity to take pity on you. You are a spiritual being claiming your rightful inheritance. You are consciously accepting what is already yours by divine right, sealing the treatment with a gratitude that implies the deed is already done in the spiritual realm. Emmet Fox taught that this prayer must be practiced as a formal, deliberate metaphysical treatment. It requires finding a moment of absolute quiet, ideally in the stillness of the early morning before the chaos of the world invades your mind. In that receptive state, you speak the prayer aloud, slowly, pausing after every single phrase to let the spiritual reality of the words sink deep into your subconscious mind. In the beginning, your logical mind will violently protest. It will tell you that it is absurd to speak of divine abundance when the bills on your kitchen table are past due. But Fox warned his students to expect this exactly. He compared it to turning on a bright light in a pitch-black room. The darkness does not fade away gradually. It is instantly obliterated by the presence of the light. When you forcefully introduce the absolute truth of divine prosperity into a mind accustomed to lack, there is friction. But if you persist in this treatment daily, that friction will dissolve into a profound, unshakable peace, and the channels of supply will inevitably begin to burst open in your material experience.